This episode is brought to you by the Sasquatch Flag Company. The Sasquatch Flag Company is a family-owned business in New England that builds hand-carved American flags from seasoned white pine. Each flag is hand-built and each star on the flag is hand-hammered and chiseled. No two flags are alike. They offer a variety of flag designs to honor the police, military, firefighters, dispatchers, and search and rescue personnel, to name a few. These stunning handmade flags look great in an office, a studio, the back porch, or above the fireplace mantle. They make the perfect gift for the veteran, first responder, or patriot in your life. Now, I love these flags, and I've been giving them as gifts for years, and I was a customer long before they became a sponsor of the show. I can't recommend them enough. So if you're looking for that perfect, uniquely American-made gift to give away, or if you want to treat yourself, go to SasquatchFlags.com and get your order in today. This episode is brought to you by the Fraternity of Excellence. The Fraternity of Excellence is an online and real-world community for men who are looking to improve in all areas of their lives. The men of FOE are working together to become better husbands, fathers, and leaders at work and in their communities. They live by a simple philosophy: as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Now, I've been a member for more than 3 years, and for me, I finally found a brotherhood of men that I was missing from my time in the military. Now, I love being around guys who are dedicated to becoming a better version of themselves. So if you're interested in becoming a man of excellence as well, go to fraternityofexcellence.com, or you can reach out directly to me to learn more. Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Frank Schwartz. Frank is the president of F3, which stands for Fitness, Fellowship, and Faith. F3 is an international leadership movement for men with about 65,000 members across 48 states and 10 countries. F3 uses vigorous outdoor workouts to teach leadership principles and to help men overcome what F3 refers to as sad clown syndrome. Frank is a leader, a husband, and a father, and I'm excited to have him on the show to talk about the lack of strong leadership and relationships in our country and throughout the world today, and what F3 is doing about it. So Frank, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me, John. Appreciate it.
It's really it's an honor to meet you, and really interested about what you guys do at F3. So I'm glad you can come on the show and talk about it.
Same, and I'm sorry that you don't meet enough good people that I'm an honor to meet. So no, I'm just kidding.
We meet a lot of good people, but not many that are leading a 65,000 person movement. I think that's pretty significant. So
it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
So let's dive right into it.
Sure.
What is F3 and who is it for?
Good question. So F3, and you kind of mentioned it, stands for Fitness, Fellowship, and Faith. And obviously, I guess the fitness part, we kind of talk and say, hey, look, it's usually a pretty intense workout, boot camp style, body weight, typical. Although there's some variation as you get across the country and stuff. Like the guys in Kenya, they tend to run a little more than we do, as you might imagine.
Yeah.
And then the fellowship part kind of comes in. You start making some friends and things like that. And then the faith part is we classify that as a belief in something bigger than yourself. We don't subscribe to any particular denomination or prescribe any sort of religion that you're supposed to have or not have. We simply say you agree that you're not the king of the world, right? And if you agree that that's the case, then you'll probably do fine. Our goal really is to make every man the best, whatever it is that he says he is, right? Mm. And so we take those with those kind of three, pillars, if you will, and we go and start men's workout groups across the world. And actually now, it used to be that we would travel to a place, right, and launch it. And now it's become ubiquitous enough that guys, these groups just kind of naturally spring up, and a lot of times they're breaking off of another group that already exists, or, somebody who did it when he was here in Charlotte, North Carolina, moves to, I don't know, Wichita or something where there isn't one, although there may be one in Wichita. I have trouble keeping up, and then he's like, hey, I want to start it here. And so it sort of spread a little bit organically like that. But yeah, the idea behind it is that somewhere along the way, the guys who founded it, Dave Redding and Tim Whitmire, they just wanted to not be fat. They were middle-aged guys and had gotten out of shape, and both of them were, Dave had been in the military, former Green Beret and stuff, and Tim had, been a college athlete. And these guys, like a lot of us do, right? We hit our 40s and we gain a little weight, and stop working out and don't have as many friends as we used to. And then we start going, man, is this all there is? And so these guys, started showing up to this outdoor workout that another person was already doing. And as it grew, this guy said, hey, man, I'm capping this. We're never going to have more than 20 guys or whatever it was. And so Dave and Tim were like, well, hey, do you care if we start one across town? And he was like, I can do whatever you want, right? And so they recognized that there was something there, and that camaraderie and that fitness and kind of that shared suffering piece. There was something magical there. And so it just, day one there were 40 guys, and now there's however many tens of thousands that there are out there. And so that's it just kind of grew organically that way as men became friends and started looking for ways to impact their community. But B, the big thing that happened is Dave realized that his big problem in the world is that he recognized there was a giant hole in male leadership. Guys standing around with their hands in their pockets in churches and boardrooms and other places where it was kind of like, well, aw shucks, they might be high-powered guys at work even, but then they come home and they're kind of just according to Jim, or what was that one, King of Queens, or one of these kind of things, right? They just came home and they were kind of and
Well,
he said, I don't want to live with that.
it happens, right? I mean, men get, and I was victim of that too, very successful in my career. You get comfortable, you get complacent, you find the couch, right?
Right.
And next thing you know, again, like myself, I was former military, right? So used to camaraderie, used to working out, used to being in shape, used to having a team around me. And then suddenly
Right.
you're sitting at home one day saying, what happened?
Yeah.
And I think too many people get sidelined. Too many men get sidelined like that.
Amen. Yes, that's exactly what happens. It's funny. Dave always says, he goes, I thought I had this incredible discipline. And then I realized as soon as I left the military, I was like, oh no, they had discipline, and I was just a benefactor of it, like beneficiary of it, because they were telling me where to be and when to work out and all that kind of stuff. He's like, oh, I was just a very disciplined guy. I was very in shape. As soon as that wasn't there anymore, he fell into doing nothing. And you're right. It's funny, John, because almost to a man, I can look in a guy's face who's kind of in that we'll call it late 30s, early 40s. Kind of that 35 to 45 range, obviously, a little bit here and there, right? And I usually can look at them and you can recognize them. They're a little overweight and they're fine. Everything's fine, and I'll tell them, I'll look them right in the face and I'll go, let me guess, brother. You've been married now for about 12 years and you just had your second, maybe third kid. And you moved out of the small 3-bedroom house and you're in the 5-bedroom house, and you upgraded your car and you got your white picket fence and you've gotten 2 promotions at work, and you and your wife sit on the couch at night and turn on the TV after dinner and you go, is this it? And almost to a man, they'll be like, are you watching me? Like, do you have like you hacked into my Ring camera or something? Yeah. Like, what is going on? Right. Because it's as predictable as anything. To know that this seems to be, and guys get upset about it, but I'm going to be honest with you, John. I think it's by design. I think it's part of the cycle. I think it's just part of what we're supposed to go through as men, is to have this sort of crisis moment, this sort of place where we're looking and going, I'm lonely, I'm not in shape, I'm not happy, I'm fine, and everything looks okay on the outside, but inside I'm dying.
Yeah.
Inside. And that's why we call it sad clown syndrome, right? Because you're this clown, you're this happy guy. It's a Sopranos reference, if you remember that, right? This clown, this happy guy on the outside, but inside you're empty. There's nothing there. You don't feel purpose. You don't feel a need to do and to fight and to go and to, be a man.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So that now I know what the sad clown I get it now.
You catch it at about 38, and if you're lucky, you can fight it off in a few years. But yeah.
So what are the mission and core principles at F3?
The mission of F3, as it is explicitly stated, is that we plant, grow, and serve small workout groups for men in order to invigorate male community leadership. That is what we are. That is what we do. And a lot of times I say, don't get confused. We're not a workout group, right? We're a leadership group.
Mm.
That's what we do. We are trying to teach men how to lead and inspire them and equip them to become the leaders that they're supposed to be in their homes and in their communities, right? And I don't mean holding leadership positions. I mean like actual leadership, not managers, leaders, right? And so that's what we're about. And it just so happens that the workout is a fantastic way to get men together.
Mm.
Although I've said many times, if knitting were the thing that brought men together, then we would knit. Right? It
Yeah.
just turns out that the workout is this great thing, and it teaches a lot of great principles. Um, it's a wonderful tool to teach leadership and to get men to lead and to step outside that, that safe place that they've kind of, insulated themselves into, right? They're afraid to stand in front of a group of men. They've never probably, stood and commanded someone to do things, and that's why we have the core principles that we have, right? So with that mission in mind of planting and growing and serving these groups, right, so that we can invigorate the leadership inside a man, we only have 5 principles, right? We don't have rules. We say rules, at least I say rules are for men who lack creativity,
Mm.
right? That's we're not really interested in rules. We don't need to tell you what to do. We're not your mommy. You don't need us to wipe your noses, right? So we just have 5 core principles, and we say if you stick to those 5 things, the rest is full liberty, whatever floats your boat. But these are the 5. Number 1 is that it is always free. You will never, ever, 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 as long as I'm drawing breath on this planet anyway, you will never be charged to attend an F3 workout. It's free, 100% all the time, just like the best things in life are, right? Number 2 is that it is open to all men. And we don't put a qualifier on that. If you're, black, white, bond and free, right? That's what we always say. And people jokingly, oh yeah, sure, bond and free, but no, legitimately, there's a guy in the Pacific Northwest who had this crazy idea, and he's going into prisons and he's started F3 workouts inside
Oh,
these things,
wow.
right? And he's
Wow.
teaching men leadership. He's trying to empower these men to
Yeah.
take control of their lives, right? Through these workouts. So, we make no qualification whatsoever. We don't care if you're in shape. We don't care if you're out of shape. We don't care if you're rich. We don't care if you're poor. In fact, that's the thing I think I love maybe the most in some instances is, especially here in Charlotte, it's not uncommon where you might have a guy who lives just kind of outside the city, right? And maybe has a blue collar job, and he will work out in the morning, bright and early. Actually, no, not bright, dark and early. And he might be working out to the guy next to a guy who's a high-powered executive at one of the giant banks and is a multi-millionaire. And they'll never have any idea, and they don't care. And as long as you're willing to suffer together, it's fine. And they might become really good friends. And there's not a lot of places in society that allow for that kind of radical inclusion, right?
Mm.
And so that is why, no matter what, we're unflinching about the fact that we are open to all men, period, full stop. The third core principle is that it's always outdoors, rain or shine, heat or cold. We don't care what's going on. Now, that's a great principle to have when you live in Charlotte, North Carolina. And right. And like this morning, it's 65 degrees. There's a light breeze and everything. Yeah, it's crystal clear. It's beautiful, right? It's a whole other thing when you got guys in Omaha, Nebraska, right, or Minneapolis, Minnesota, and there's 3 feet of snow on the ground. And you know what? They do it anyway, John.
Yeah.
They do it anyway because we believe that part of your job as a man is to become mentally and physically tough, to be durable, and to subject yourself to things that make you uncomfortable and maybe even cause you some pain, because that's useful for you to be effective and useful as a man, right? So it's always outdoors, doesn't matter. If you're inside and you're working out with guys, we respect that, but that is not an F3 workout, right? Number 4 is that it is led by men who participate in the workout. So peer led, right? There's no professionals and there's no training necessary. There's no certifications or anything like that, right? Nobody here is a pro. Nobody's getting paid, and nobody has any kind of special institutional knowledge to teach you how to be a workout. We're not making personal trainers, John. We're making leaders, right? And so that is how it is done. You learn how to be a leader. You learn how to run the workout from other men who have done it before you, and through a healthy amount of failure.
Yeah.
Right? Is doing it wrong a few times, and then you'll figure it out. And then the last thing that we always do, no matter what, and that makes F3, I think, different and special outside of any other kind of fitness movement or fitness group or really any other kind of group for men, period, is that it always ends in what we call a circle of trust. And that circle of trust is it's a time to be vulnerable. It's a time to share what's on your heart. It's a time to seek help, maybe, from your brothers, right? And we've had, I mean, I've stood in circles where everything from my kid committed suicide to I'm feeling like I'm going to fall off the wagon, and go back to being and drinking alcohol, all the way down to, look, I'm struggling at work, for whatever the thing might be. But we have that time. It's an open time where guys can share what they're dealing with, and sometimes it goes deep. Sometimes it's just sort of a mention, like, hey, if you think about it, maybe say a prayer for me later, or keep a thought, whatever it might be, right? But that sort of time, that intimate time, and that time when you have a chance to really connect and really hear what's on a man's heart and have him be open, and to share. I hate the word vulnerable, because that would kind of imply that you're unsafe in some way, but because it's one of the safest places you can be, right? These are your brothers. These are the men that are going to take care of you. And we see it, we see these men serving each other, serving their communities all the time. I mean, we tell these crazy stories of, like, guys on vacation, in Texas, and he's from, somewhere on the East Coast, and one of his neighbors, who's an F3 guy, drives by and sees his house is, like the outside, hose thing is, spitting water or whatever. And he stops and, figures out how to fix it. And they call one of the other guys who's a plumber. And, like, all this happens while this guy's on vacation. He may or may not have even known that it was happening, right? These are the kinds of stories. In fact, literally just this morning, a guy says, hey, does anyone have a contact in Hawaii? Because my daughter's there on a work study kind of a thing or whatever for school, and the conditions she is living in are just atrocious. And we were sold a bill of goods, and we're feeling very, very frustrated, but we have nothing, we have nowhere to send her. We don't know what to do. We're not there. We can't get there very quickly. And so just like that, instantly, he puts it in our, out on the communications channels, and guys are like, oh yeah, sure. I got a buddy who's in, whatever. Right. And it's taken care of just like that. I mean, it is the most, and I think it comes from that intimacy that happens in those circles of trust. There's something about knowing that an F3 guy, and that you're an F3 guy, right? It checks a lot of boxes. It makes me trust you quicker. Yeah.
What is it with men? This is interesting, because it's an observation I've had, as far as, like, if you get men to sit around and talk, they may not talk. They may not discuss anything. But if you do something together, and I've noticed this, like my relationship with my father, like, we'll both be together. We might be quiet. We might not talk about a lot.
Right.
But as soon as we get out in the field, like we grew up hunting and hiking and fishing together, and I still hunt with him every year.
Yes.
And when we're in the field and we're going walking through mud and going through the brush, and we're just having this dialogue, and and we have these deep dialogues when we're doing things. And I notice that men connect when they're doing things. Is that something that is part of that F3 experience? Is like, you're doing things, and that's how men connect. We don't sit around in a circle and just tell stories. We tend to like to be working with our hands and doing something physical, and that's how we connect better. Is that part of the principle of F3?
Oh, I wouldn't say that it was an intentional part necessarily,
Yeah.
right? But I would agree that is 100%, one of the very, very special and important parts. And now you said, why is that? And I go, heck if I know, I didn't make us, right? But whether you believe that God imbued us, that desire and that tendency way back when we were created, or if you think it's something that came evolutionarily, I don't really care. It's a fact that it's here, right? And so I agree wholeheartedly. In fact, there are guys who they tried, hanging out as buddies, like, sitting at the coffee shop and just, and chatting.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work for them very well.
Yeah.
To get started, for sure, especially when it's early, or especially early on, right? In the relationship. Maybe later they could do it, but so they ruck, like these 4 or 5 guys will go out, they'll throw on a pack, and they just start walking. And they have some of the deepest and most intimate conversations about things. I experienced it myself. A buddy of mine says, hey, I'm going to be honest, I'm having some trouble with something, and I'm wondering if we can chat. And I was like, yeah, man. So we throw on a ruck, we go for a walk. We end up walking probably about 5, 6, 7 miles or something. It was a long way. and he shares, he shares his heart saying, hey, I'm having some thoughts of infidelity.
Mm.
I ran into this old girlfriend, and whatever, blah, blah, blah. We've been having trouble in my marriage. By the end of that talk, it's all off his chest. He's opened it up. He recognizes that he caught it early and he was grateful. And he says things like, those talks, not me, but those talks, those things that we do together as men, are the things that saved him. They're the things that kept him from falling, into problems, right? And I agree. I think we are physical beings as men. We are supposed to do things. I think it's deep in our DNA, deep in our hearts. It's planted in there for us to be useful. We must have purpose. If we are purposeless, then you see what's happening right now.
Yeah.
Right. You see what men are doing, right? And the bad behavior that they have is terrible because they don't have a purpose. They don't have something that they're working for. They're sitting on couches, they're playing video games, or, indulging in all kinds of terrible things. And that's, I think you're right. I think there's a real element to that. In fact, just to keep talking too much, because that's part of what I do. But we even go so far as to say, hey, you should find not just things to do, but really stupid things to do.
Yeah.
We have a whole section of things, a whole segment of what we do, we call CSOP, right? Which is an acronym for completely stupid and utterly pointless. Like, there is no reason to go out and run, a 200-mile relay together or something stupid like that, right? There's no reason to do that. Why would you have cars? Why would you do that? Because there's an element of that shared suffering and that physical nature that bonds us as men.
Yeah.
Just a thing.
Yeah. Interesting. So what would you say makes F3 different from other organizations, similar organizations? Like, you could say CrossFit's similar to it. Maybe you could say church groups, men's groups at church. Absolutely. Or whatever. But what sets F3 apart?
I think the thing that sets it apart is, if there was one singular thing that we could point to, and if you held, they always say, if you held a gun to my head, right? If you absolutely forced me and said, you have to pick one thing that makes it different than everything else, I would say the thing that makes it truly different than any other organization on earth is the fact that we are focused on a mission and on a purpose that is greater than ourselves. And it is greater than the activity that we are participating in, right? So CrossFit gym, look, I probably shouldn't say this and I might make some of our guys mad. You probably can get a better workout in a CrossFit gym.
Yeah.
You probably can. You're going to have somebody there shouting at you, telling you what to do. That's a little more structured. You got better equipment because we're out there picking up rocks and cinder blocks. John, what? Come on. Right. No one's critiquing our form and telling us how to do it correctly outside of each other. Right. We don't have professional instructors. So you probably get more fit and probably, a better workout at someplace else. Right. Orange Theory or CrossFit or anything like that. But they're not working together for a common purpose. They're just there to work out. Right. Same thing with the church group. They are there maybe for a common purpose, but then they don't have any of this physical aspect of it that just like you were talking about, that motivates men to be more vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right. That motivates men to bond. Now we can bond over our faith, right? We might have a commonality there, and we might, share some things in common, and that's wonderful. But there is nothing like being in the middle of the night, and these are some of the other idiot things that we do, right? Being in the middle of the night, carrying horrifyingly heavy things, and having to complete a task together, and then at the end of the day, right, or the morning rolls around, the light dawn breaks, and here you are, and you're completing this task together, this thing that you had a common purpose toward, and these men, I watch them, hundreds of them. These are, now I have 75 new best friends. These guys shared those things together. Those things don't exist in the same way. And I'm not trying to pick on the church, right? But show me where there's suffering, like true, honest to goodness suffering in our world, in our country, at church. How difficult is it to go to the air-conditioned church and sit back and watch come on.
Right? And I think that's why many men have struggled to connect in the church, because it is. And I have a good friend of mine, Jerry Adams, just wrote a great book called Men of Grit. And it's a call to Christian men to go back to being the warriors we were meant to be in the Bible. We were not people who sat around in air-conditioned offices. I mean,
No.
and so I think that, and I think that that's a problem with a lot of men, is that they don't feel at home in the church because it's not natural for them,
Yeah.
versus being outdoors and being physical. And there's a lot of things that men, it's in our DNA. It's how we're
Yeah.
built. It's how we're designed, and we're
It is.
physical beings. And I think that we struggle sometimes with, we're going to go in and we're going to sing songs and we're going to hold hands, and it's like, it doesn't feel comfortable to me.
And it's not a, again, I'm not knocking on the church, right? It's
Yeah,
same,
yeah,
same in my face, same with all of them, right? But there has been, and I look, everything's on a continuum, kind of on a pendulum, if you
yeah,
will,
yeah,
right? And there was a time when these warrior monks existed, right? These
yeah,
the chivalry and this kind of old school, right? And I think we swung to a much more feminized version, and
yeah,
there was probably good purpose in that. There's probably some good reasons for that. And I think in some ways, for me anyway, what it's done is that it has made me a little more gentle and a little more soft
mm,
on certain kinds of things when it was necessary, right? It's helped me to be probably a better father to my daughters and a better husband to my wife, to understand some of those kinds of things.
mm.
Well, good. I understand them. Guess what? I think it's time to swing the pendulum back a little further this way. Does it need to go all the way back to riding horseback and that sort of thing? Probably not. Take it easy, right? But I don't need to live off the land. It's some sort of what, a compound or something, right? To be manly enough, right? So, but I don't think it needs to swing all the way back the other way. But I do think now we've seen it, and we're kind of tired. It's time to swing back. You see it everywhere. I mean, there's so many. Every time I turn around, there's a new group that is saying men are not doing what they need to do. They are not in their place. They are not surviving. They're not thriving. I mean, that we're ready to jump the shark when the mainstream media and like the New York freaking Times is saying there's an epidemic of male loneliness in the country.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, really? Thank
yeah,
you. Glad you could join us. We've been here for years,
yeah,
So if they're noticing,
yeah.
there's a problem. It's a big problem, right? And so every
It's
time you turn around, it's a
interesting.
new group.
It's interesting, and I tell the story a lot, is that when I left the military, it was 7 years before I sort of found my way again.
Mm.
Because I lived, when I was in the military, it was, there was a sense of purpose, there was a sense of camaraderie, there was a sense of teamwork. And then I end up, in corporate America, right?
Right,
Sitting in a cubicle, and nobody wants to go out for a beer afterwards. Everybody's sort of like, I know I've got a family at home. And so I have no
right.
brotherhood. I lose my brotherhood. I lose my purpose. I lose my mission. And I'm trying to figure out, well, what I'm working for this big giant company, and I don't
Right.
really know what they stand for and what I stand for anymore. But it took me 7 years to find my purpose again. And I know a lot of guys getting out of the military, especially, they really, when they leave that, tight group, like I was on a
Yeah.
submarine, 155 of us, we were a team. Like,
Right.
we went out to sea together. We spent 3 months,
Yeah.
isolated together. We knew everything about each other. We were brothers,
Yeah.
and we didn't have it was an all male crew back then. But
Sure.
and then you
The good old
lose
days.
that. You instantly lose that when you leave the military. And I think it's a big problem with veterans
Yeah.
losing that sense of purpose, losing that camaraderie. And that's why there's so much depression,
Mhm.
anxiety. There's suicide is a big
Very
issue for
bad.
veterans. And I
Yeah.
think so. As we're talking about, it's definitely a need for veterans to find groups like F3 to be able to have that
Yep.
bond, that team, that brotherhood that they miss from their days in the military.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. In fact, there's a number of places in the country. I want to say, and I know I'm going to mess it up. I'm pretty sure it's Houston, where we've got a big contingent. There's a recovery facility down there that is veterans only.
Mm.
And so essentially, if you've come home and you kind of found yourself now in this really dark spot, you've subjected to given into alcoholism, and some of them are homeless, and I mean some of these guys show up drug addicted and just just a mess. And it's 120 days and it's free, and they have this recovery facility down there, made called Camp Hope, and it's an amazing thing. And somehow or other, and I'm trying to remember, it was a buddy of mine who knew these guys, sat on the boards. I don't remember, community, right? So you connect with the guys in Houston that are leading workouts down there, and you say, hey, look, go look at this thing, see if this is something, and let me know. And they go down, they take a look, and they're like, yeah, we're going to start workouts here. And so now every Saturday, and I think actually another 2 or 3 days a week, they go in, they lead workouts with these guys, they're talking to them, they're helping these guys get back on their feet, get back to where they have some camaraderie. And even even the guys that come home and are, quote unquote functional, right? Our mutual friend Brian Jodis, his dad was a 3-star general in the Air Force. Right, I mean, he was in the Joint Chiefs. I mean, he knew people. He was a NATO guy. I mean, you would think he has it all together. He said he came home and same kind of thing, right? He lost the camaraderie, and he has said that he has found nothing even close to that until he got involved in F3.
That's
right?
fantastic.
Nothing even close to that until he found F3. Because again, we're not a workout group, man.
Yeah.
We are a group that is making men better. That is what we are all about. And we just happen to use workout to do that.
What you mentioned making leaders too. That's another part of it. What's your definition of leadership from the F3 perspective?
Yeah, that's a good question. We often say we use crazy terms. That's one of the things. Well, and you know how it is in the military, right? So Dave comes back as from being a special operator, and he makes up terms and stuff all the time. So we have our own weird, strange, unique language that we share. But we often say the leader is the man responsible for the outcome of the thing, right? Whatever that might be. And by virtue of the fact that he is responsible, then he must possess certain skills and certain characteristics in order to be what we would say a virtuous leader. We don't think that governance, a man who holds a position of authority, is a leader necessarily. Sometimes they overlap, but they are not necessarily the same thing. And what we see a lot in our world is we have tons of managers. We have tons of people who sit in positions of governance who would love to tell you what to do. I mean, there's a few hundred of them up in Washington, if I'm not mistaken, right? They would love to tell you what to do, and they'd love to control what's happening in your life, right? I don't know that I would classify them as leaders per se. There's probably, and I know there's some leaders within the group, but that's not necessarily their function, right? They're there to make laws, they're and apparently to tweet. I don't know. That's apparently a thing now, but the point is that but a true leader is someone who takes responsibility for the outcome, not responsibility for making the rules, not responsibility for telling people what to do, not responsible for, the data integration of the. Are you going to take control? Are you going to, when in charge, you're going to take charge? And are you going to sit down and say, hey, I am responsible for the outcome of this thing. I am a man who is going to lead others. I'm going to drive them toward an advantageous place in their lives. Am I going to do that? If I'm doing that, then that's probably leading, right? That's probably leading, depending on how you're doing it, right? If your compulsion is a big thing, if you're a coercer, that's not leadership, right? Then you're just a jerk, right? But if you are lovingly telling a man, hey, I see in you where I think you could be. Yeah, I think you could be, and I am absolutely desperate to help you get there. That's leadership.
That's fantastic. Frank, this has been a fantastic conversation. What would be like a final message you'd like to leave with our listeners about F3 or anything just related to what we've been talking about?
Yeah, I would say as far as F3 is concerned, we'll do the shameless promotion thing at the very end, right? So I'll tell them to go to a workout and all that kind of stuff. But as far as F3 is concerned, the thing that I want people to really understand, and I don't feel like I can say it quite enough, we are a disorganization, John. We are an unorganization. I sit as the president of this thing that is tens of thousands of men. I have no power to do anything, right? It is a wholly decentralized situation. The men that are on the ground in those individual cities, heck, even down to the individual workouts that happen on individual days, those are the leaders. Those are the men that are moving the needle forward, right? Those are the men that are headlocking their friends and saying, hey, get out here. Come with me. Show up to a workout. Come unlock that man that is deep within your heart, that's always been there, right? And come and live out your purpose, man. Come fulfill the reason that you were created. Those are the guys that are the leaders, right? And so everything that you think of when you think of a big institution run by people, men or whatever it might be, right? Flip all that on its head. That's what we are. That's what we are. There's no promotion. You can't run for anything here.
Mm.
You're appointed, right? Men choose their successors, right? You can't get votes. There's no democracy in F3. That's not a thing, right?
I
You
love it.
can't earn it. There's no bonus pay because everyone's a volunteer. No,
Yeah.
there's only one guy who's an employee that makes a living off of F3, and he's the executive director of our charitable, our foundation, right? And the only reason that he exists is because we were like, we don't have any idea what we're doing, and we're really getting ourselves in a lot of trouble. We need someone to professionally come run this foundation,
Yeah.
so the guys
Yeah.
can, right? So he's the only employee, and probably will be for a long, long time. I don't know,
Yeah.
if we bring other people in. But the point is that it's a decentralized thing, and the reason for that is because you're the leader, man.
Mm.
That fourth core principle is real. It is true. It is peer led because every man's a leader.
Mm.
Every man should be doing this in their lives. I'm not an expert. I don't know anything. I've only learned what I've learned because I've failed at stuff a whole lot, right? I didn't go through some school and they were like, now he's earned his credentials and he can be the president of F3. No, the guy who was the leader of F3, the guy who started it said, you're the next guy.
Mm.
And I'll do the same thing when that time comes, right? And that's how this gets, and that's the beauty of it, is because it is 100% individual. We're not interested in whether or not you become a great super fit guy and you win some sort of Olympic medal. Don't care, right? I don't care. And I would say this is true of every man, right? I don't care how much money you earn. I don't care what title you hold. I don't care about any of that in your life. And you shouldn't either. I don't care what age you think you're going to retire at. That's not interesting. In fact, I'm not even sure you're supposed to retire. I think you're supposed to work, right? I think you're supposed to be useful and contributing to the day you die.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree with that.
That's what I think. Right. And so I would say, the thing I want people to understand about F3, the thing I want them to understand about leadership, the thing I want them to understand is themselves as men, is it's already in you. And you've got to find some way to allow it to come out. You've got to find some way to uncover those things, get past those self-limiting beliefs, and let that man that is inside and deep in your heart, and it's always been there, that God put in there, and let that come out of you.
Mm. Fantastic. That's a great message, great final message. Frank, how can people find out more about F3 and more about you and how to connect with a workout group maybe around in their area?
100%. If you are so foolish that you want to learn about me, you can I'm on Twitter a lot. I love tweeting. That is at Dark Helmet F3, right? At Dark Helmet F3. And that's because we give each other idiot nicknames. It's part of the, kind of that tribalism and stuff that we sort of, part of what makes you part of the group, right? You come out.
It's because of your last name.
It is. It 100%. Yes. It's a Spaceballs reference.
Spaceballs
right?
reference, right?
Yep. Because of the Schwartz. That's exactly it. See, Gen Xers, we know. We
get it.
Yeah. And so if you want to know about F3, go to f3nation.com. There's a tab there, locations. There's a big map. You can find anywhere in the world where there is a location that is running, right, a workout on any given day at any given time. It's listed. It's in there. There's coming on 4,000 different weekly workouts. There's about 4,000 that happen a week across the country and throughout the world. And yeah, so you just go on there. The best part is you don't have to pay a fee. You don't have to register. You just show up. You show up and you say, I'm an FNG, John. That's what you do. It stands for friendly new guy.
Friendly, huh? That's not what we called it.
I know. I love telling that one to a military guy because he knows exactly what's going on, right? Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
In fact, there's two in my area. There's I think it's Mondays and Tuesdays, and in Wake Forest, for example, and Tuesdays a ruck. I think Monday's a boot camp kind of style workout. So yeah. But I'll probably get my butt out there one of these mornings.
I know you've got a home gym. I know you're a fitness guy. No, and I'm really serious when I say this, right? And I know you've got buddies, and I know you got friends, and I know all those things are true. And sometimes I say that every man needs F3, right? And I don't necessarily really mean that because I just think they need something like F3 that gives them that same sense of purpose and push and all that kind of stuff, right? I really think that's true. But sometimes I tell a guy, and I think this is the case for a guy like you, and I'm not just blowing smoke. Sometimes F3 needs guys like you, right? We need guys to come out who are seasoned leaders, who know what they're doing, and who want to pour into other men and teach them how to be leaders. So Look, I love you. Selfishly go to your home gym if you want. Not a problem. I don't hold that against you. I'm not here to judge, right? But I would say that any man who feels like he's lonely and sad and he's asking himself that question, what's next? Is this all there is? Right? Get your butt to a workout. If you're a guy who thinks he's got it all figured out, none of us are that stupid, right? But who's already kind of got it together and he's thinking to himself, I know that I have a heart for pouring into other men and helping them learn to be leaders. Then you show up, but don't show up for yourself. Show up for those other guys. Fair?
Makes a lot of sense. That's great. It's a great message, Frank. And we're going to put links in the show notes for those resources. And again, it's f3nation.com. It's the workouts are everywhere. I mean, it's incredible. Like I said, I look in my town and there's two every week.
There are very few places anymore that you can't get to one within about an hour or two.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's free. And it's a way to bond. It's a way to get have a physical workout and connect with other men. And I think we need that in a lonely and disconnected world that we live in. We're more connected than ever, but we're more lonely. And it's interesting. We need connection, and I think that's really important. So,
very true.
Frank, I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing this message. I think that you give us a lot to think about, and hopefully, listeners, that you take a look at f3nation.com, find a workout in your area, get out there and connect with other men. I think it's an important thing that all of us need to do.
Thank you, John. It's been a blessing, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on the show. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.